Last Tuesday, I challenged my viewers to paint this, and this accidentally created one of the most interesting painting tutorials ever. Why? Because I delegated all the key decisions to my chat. What pigments to use, how to darken, how to lighten, how to approach it, everything had to be decided in the comment section. Step 1, I have to take out all the blue pigments that I have in my inventory, and there's a lot. Alright. So we want something that matches this. I already see phthalo, Prussian, alizarin, crimson, and white is my opinion. Felicia going hardcore, spelling the entire thing. Phthalocyanine. But because there was some confusion here with the blue pigments, I thought that it would be a good idea to run over some key points of the color theory regarding blue before we jump any further. To the Bat Cave. Okay, so here we are. Our color mixing wheel, the famous one. So right here we're really talking about blue. I don't know what you call that, but I call this cyan. A cyan is not blue, just like an orange is not light red. And how come we need to make such a big difference? Why can't we say, all right, so this is all blue, right? Why are you annoying us with technicalities like that? Because of these, ladies and gentlemen. Look at this. This little dot points to the peak chroma value. All right, I call it home color to be more precise. What's the peak chroma value? Let me show you. So the peak chroma value is here. For a certain type of value, each color will peak at a specific value. For example, blue will peak in chroma, so there's the most, like the widest the widest variety in saturation can be obtained if blue is around 30% in the value, so relatively low on the scale. But a cyan, you see that the peak chroma value is this time on a much lighter value, and in this case it's more 80. So a cyan will in theory behave much more like a yellow than a blue. So when you mix a blue, it will typically have a very intense potential in the darkest range. Just know that the eye is capable of perceiving a lot of various nuances of blue in the darkest range, and in the lightest area of the curve is kind of, it's limited, right? What do you see in the highlights? What do you perceive here, my friends? Some people see violet. I see violet. Okay. You see violet, and you're right. You're right. So it might tell us that the blue that we have would be probably more in this range than this range, right? It might indicate that this is not necessarily our best shot. Typically, we have a pigment that's from here. What if you don't have any of those? What if the only pigment you have is cobalt blue and you're way out of the range, you're right here? Then in that case, you're going to need to supplement your blue with something magenta, violet. So maybe pick a little touch of magenta, pulling the color to this magenta range, at least for the highlights. So that can be interesting. We'll need to figure it out. Some people see magenta. Sometimes it can also be a sort of a chromatic effect. Because as we saw, the blue is so weak in the lightest range, it can have an effect like that. Exactly the opposite. I always like to say that blue is very much the opposite of yellow in this matter. The yellow is very weak in the dark range, so much so that it's very difficult to conceive a dark yellow. I always say to people, okay, so define a dark yellow. Does it exist at all? Does it? And people really think, and whenever they think, they either come up with something that's brown, so it's actually a dark orange, let's be precise, or they come up with something that's some sort of olive green, so it's actually more a green. A dark yellow is not really a thing. It's like we haven't even conceived a word to talk about the existence of a dark yellow that's purely yellow. It's either green or orange. With the blue, it's kind of the opposite way. It's very hard to conceive whatever happens here in this range, because the blue is so weak in this area, and you have a tendency to see it either as a cyan or as a violet. Because it's like there's not much, visual data that your eyes can really catch. So it, like, your brain and your eyes naturally switch to whatever comes in the wheel that feels closely related. So in the case of yellow, again, you see something either green or orange, and in the case of blue, you either see a light blue as something cyan or as something violet. Very weird thing, but it's because of the limitation of the blue in this color range that you see it this way. So very weird, but thankfully this is something we can do with our mixing. Talking about mixing, after this lengthy, nerdy introduction into color theory, it was finally time to put our hands in the paint and start mixing. But first we need to find the best selection of pigments for our palette. The difficult job starts now. We have to decide what blue to pick. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick all the blue, green, and cyan that I have, and magenta. You'll be the one in charge, right? So that's the point of the challenge, is you're gonna tell me how to paint this stuff. Actually, I have tons of blue. A lot that I don't use. This is it. Alright, so we want something that matches this. What I have right there is dioxazine violet, so let's try it. So it's really violet in this case. So it's very violet. Alright, so next, not this one. Okay. So people want to try ultramarine. I'm going to try the Prussian first, just to show you the Prussian. So this is Prussian blue, because it's also a very famous one. PB27. Alright, not the right one either. Next. Okay. I'm going with whatever you say. So this is phthalo blue manganese. This one I found very weak. Not the right pigment. Let's switch to the next one. People tell me, okay, I can't keep up, but people tell me to use French ultramarine, because the French is always the best. Grab the French. Darn close, right? You find it. Alright, so it took us some time, but my viewers collectively found the right pigment, ultramarine blue PB29. But one pigment isn't enough to paint this entire thing. We need to create the impression of volume, create the lights and the shadows. So what do we do with this ultramarine blue, and what can we mix with it? Try magenta for the highlights. Okay, I'm gonna do that. Try magenta. So we keep some magenta on the side for the highlights. I can do that. I'm gonna do that. So this is what I think Nicole suggested. Nicole suggested alizarin, but I've used magenta here. So for the highlights. So that's a very good idea. It will help us mix to imitate the slight violet shift that we noticed in the highlights. So let's move on with this. Next big question is, how do we darken and how do we create the shadow colors for this one? So burnt umber to darken. Okay, I've seen some people who are used to my my videos, I always talk about that. Raw umber, burnt umber. Okay, my friends, back to the bat cave. And so we figured we are around here. And most probably, the cutter from the tube that we have is this one. This is our home. We're starting from here. If you use the burnt umber is approximately here. Okay? What do you notice? Whoever suggested to use the burnt umber, it's a great idea to create a very neutral kind of black. The thing is, it's a very, very helpful mix because both are very dark and both are relatively low chroma. So, well, no, because both, when mixed together, because they are complementary, they neutralize each other. They are almost complementary. Remember, blue and orange is actually a sort of a curve like that, and it goes almost perfectly in the middle, which is why when you mix burnt umber, which is here, and let me do it again. When you mix burnt umber and blue, you get something that's perfectly in the middle, so you have a perfectly neutral black. But this one is a very useful black, but in this case it's a very low chroma black. So it's going to be difficult to pick up the vibrant feeling, the vibrant sense that we have in these shadows right there. We want to preserve some of that. So if we want to mix the blue, make it darker, what do we have? Just go around the wheel and check something that would be dark but more in the blue range. What do we have? Yeah, black. Exactly. Everybody wants to complain that black doesn't work. Like when you mix a color with black, it makes everything dull, it makes everything flat. Well, it's because everybody complains because they want to mix skin tones with black. Well, obviously skin tones are in the orange range. Black is actually more a color, oh sorry, misclick. Black is actually a color that's in the blue part of the color range. That's perfect. That's perfect for us. Stop bashing on black, because black is a perfectly good color if what you want to darken is blue. And there you go. We have a nice dark color that will perfectly match with what we want to darken because it's in the same range. First of all, the ultramarine is already very dark. And how do you make it even darker? You just need something extra black, and you need ivory black. And there we go. We finally know how to lighten and how to darken our ultramarine blue, even though it's already very dark, so it doesn't need a lot of darkening. But to create the shadows, we still need black, and we are going to use ivory black, so that's a good find. Now I can finally start mixing a little value scale, and we're going to start painting. But wait! I can't make this decision by myself. I have to ask my chat, and I have to follow their instructions. That's part of the challenge, remember? I can't make this decision by myself. I need to check with my chat and see how they want to approach it. So how should we start? And actually, a couple viewers in the chat suggested a very effective strategy to start this sort of painting. Tell me, what would be your strategy? You are in control. The darkest darks first. Okay. So I like this. I like this. I like this. So what? What should I do first? Do you suggest I do the background first? Or these areas first? The lighter, the more paint, the darker, the less paint. I like this! I like this. You've been to a good school, my friend. You've been to a good school. Okay, so everybody agrees on the background. So it's not always that you need to start with the background, but when the colors in your subject kind of match somehow with the background. Like here, for example, the entire side of my cast are almost as dark as the black background. So how do I make that if I don't have the black background first? And plus, like, starting with the darkest dark is a very common idea, usually very smart idea, typically. So that's what we're doing here. And yeah, that's one thing as well. Starting with the background is something that I recommend very often, because it's kind of an easy way to warm up. Let's say you paint a portrait or anything. If you start with the background, it's kind of a, you get in the zone. You really warm up. You loosen up. You get in the spirit of the painting, and from there you're in the spirit of the project. But if you start, let's say you start immediately with the eye on the portrait, it might be difficult to, do it right at the first attempt. So starting with the background is always generally a good decision. It's a good stretch. It's not needed, it's not necessary, but it's typically a good strat. You also set your tones, and yeah, you have whenever you are painting, you have a context on which you can judge the colors of your subject. So that's the only good things can come from painting the background first. Okay, again from darkest to lighter tones. All right. We'll try that. The only problem that I'm gonna have with this one is that the ultramarine is transparent, and this is annoying. Painting monochromatic with a transparent pigment is not such a great idea, because it's hard to control. You want more opaque if possible. I do have some PB29 that's opaque. I can pull it off. I'd rather not. I can use the ultramarine, the ivory black. No, that's ivory black is opaque. In this case, the opacity can be an issue, because kind of if you paint a single layer, the opacity can be an issue. The white that I mixed for the lightest areas and the black will kind of compensate, but yeah, we are so lucky they found a way to manufacture basically the best blue ever. Lapis lazuli used to be more expensive than gold, and for me, like, if you ask me, a much better investment than gold. Like, and Renaissance artists knew about this, and they weren't fools either. And when they asked them to make the same old paintings with the gilding and all, they said, nah, give me this blue. Actually, I want this. Keep your gold, because it's not like, I can't do anything realistic with this gold, but with this blue, the paintings of the Raphaels, the Da Vinci's and all using this blue instead of the gilding that was done back then, before. Made these Renaissance CDs much more powerful back then and still today, because of all the tourism. People still flock there to see what was painted with this simple material. And yeah, as Seth said, we're so lucky, because this is exactly the same stuff even more pure because you can chemically recreate it. So probably more pure than what they had. Insane. We're just so lucky, right? We don't like think about it that much with all the modern chemistry, but at some point people noticed that I was going all over the place and I was not focused on one area, which is a strategy called tiling. And people noticed that I was working on the entire area first, which is more a sort of a two-step process in which you first want to cover the entire surface first with colors, and then this would be step one, and then you just retouch and rework all the transitions. So it's a different method. You have tiling, or you can work on the whole picture. And when you're done with step one, you have a much clearer vision of all the colors, and the unity of the piece is much easier to maintain. And then you just have to correct the shapes, correct the transitions, blend if necessary, and make all the tiny corrections that need to be done wet on wet directly on the canvas. Or you can also let it dry and come back the next day. But in my case, I did it right away. So there you go. This is how I accidentally created one of the most interactive tutorials that I've ever made, because I simply didn't make it by myself. I made it with the help of my viewers. If you want to paint this model, you can. It's still available. You can just follow the link in the description and you'll get to the assignment plate and you can join the fun. You can also join the Discord with the invite link that's listed in the description of this video. There you can ask your questions or share your results. Can't wait to see all these wonderful blue paintings. I'll see you in the Discord or on YouTube, my friends. Until then, joy and inspiration to you. Bye.